Hello, this is Felix from howtopracticedrawing.com, and in this episode we will learn a simple trick that master painters use to draw realistic looking mouths. This is the third part in my series on how to draw with design. You might have seen the first video on how to draw eyes realistically with abstract design principles, and the second one was on how to draw noses. So today we'll cover the natural third step, which is how to draw the mouth. Now the mouth is interesting because most people would guess when you draw a mouth it's something like this. Just a bunch of simple lines creating a mouth similar to this. As we go now into studying this portrait by Raimundo de Madrazo, we will realize that there are actually a few simple design tricks he uses to design this mouth so that it looks very realistic and fits into the rest of the portrait. After checking out how he does it, we will also study a painting by John Singer Sargent where we study the mouth and the profile. So if you've been struggling to draw the mouth with realism and beautiful design, in this video I think you'll get quite a few tips and takeaways that you can apply in your own drawings. Alright, I'm going to get into the drawing now, and then in a little bit I'll stop and explain to you a few design principles that we learned from this painting. Alright, as you can see, I started to draw this mouth, and maybe you saw along the process what is quite interesting, and you can see it in the master studies, that equally as important as the mouth is actually the anatomy around it. So this whole structure of muscle that basically can move the mouth actually are very well connected to the mouth and to the rest of the face in this painting. So if you pay attention, you see there's this whole shape here that is around the whole muzzle of the mouth up to this shape below the nose and here, and it then connects to the cheeks and the chin. There was a first tip I kind of took away. If you think like a shape, something like that, basically a whole shape around the mouth that makes the mouth feel like it's correctly positioned in space and attached to the nose and attached to the cheeks. As you draw it from here, it becomes really apparent. For example, the little corner of the mouth here, little line, it connects very well into this like little form here. That's part of the mouth muscle, and then it connects to the rest. So that was the first design lesson I took away. The second one is that when you think of the lips, they're actually not these very flat shapes. What you can see here is that they are very subtle forms, and maybe a simple way of thinking about the lips is actually more like pillows. So they're these very soft forms with very soft edges around them. So when you draw them, you don't want to do these harsh lines, because actually that's already the first mistake, because we can see it here. Actually, if you look at the bottom lip, it's like a very soft edge at the bottom lip. And the reason is because the lip is actually turning slowly. It's round. It's not like a corner. So that's kind of the first interesting takeaway I got from studying this master painting. And then the next one is that the line in between the lips, again, we tend to think, oh, it's one very harsh line that kind of separates the upper from the lower lip. But what you can see actually here is that this is not the case. So first of all, we have an occlusion shadow, an accent in the corner here. And it's different from the right side, from her point of view, to the left side. So we have kind of this, in this corner of the mouth, this dark accent. And then it almost connects to a very fine, almost invisible line to here. Here the line is also very subtle. And then here, on this side, suddenly becomes much more pronounced. We can see also that it tries to describe the form here with a round curve, and then in the end it tapers down a little. A great design lesson here is that this line that separates the upper from the lower lip, it should not be this simple continuous line. It should be basically a very asymmetric, broken up set of lines combined with these little occlusion shadows. So that's really a great takeaway from this. That's basically what the mouth, the middle line, looks like. Now the next part is that, as you can maybe see, the upper lip is in shadow while the lower lip has some kind of highlight on it. That was definitely very helpful for me to learn at some point, that because the light comes from above, the upper lip is usually more in shadow than the lower lip, assuming the light comes from above. That's why the lower lip has this little highlight, and in general is lighter than the upper lip. So that's another little design trick that helps you get the lips more realistic. So yeah, in summary, it's about paying attention to the shapes and subtle forms around the mouth to make it connect. It's about getting this line that separates the upper from the lower lip to not read like a continuous line, but have very subtle little lost and found moments in this line. And then the next is to pay attention to the upper lip being darker, lower lip lighter, having a highlight, basically the light shadow logic. And yeah, all these combined, I actually think are great lessons that I took away from this one. So now that we studied Raimundo de Madrazo, let's check out the next lips or mouth to study from John Singer Sargent. All right, as you can see in this one, we have a profile shot. So the lips are almost in a perfect profile, not completely. There's like a slight angle still. But this obviously makes it a little different than the first one. So let me get into it. Let me draw it. Then let's see what lessons we can extract from it. All right, as you can see in this kind of profile shot of the mouth, what's different to the frontal shot is that we're dealing a little bit less with these super subtle forms and edges. I mean, they obviously still are here, but a big part of drawing the mouth is actually a simple shape. And that's because in this profile, that's a little bit how it just appears. It's this little shape here, and then it kind of flows into the lower lip, and then you have this cast shadow below the lip that kind of creates this darker shadow. And yeah, and then it already goes into the chin and up here into the nose. And obviously here in the corner of the mouth, you always have this little occlusion shadow, and then there's this little piece of flesh here where you get, again, some subtle form gradations. And once you have that, you already have the feeling of the mouth. So that's definitely something I'm taking away from this little master copy, that when the mouth is in profile, it's actually a little bit easier to draw than when it's full frontal. Because when you look at it from the front, you really have to get all these little transitions right. You know, the corner of the lip here has to be slightly round. Then the transition from the occlusion shadow to the lip, you have to get right. The transition from the top of the lip to the surrounding areas, that's also a bit tricky because there's always a little bright side on top of the lip that catches light and then it goes dark again. These side muscles that connect. So it's actually, from the front, it's all about controlling the edges and the transitions, and that just takes time. And in terms of technique, it takes a lot of very subtle, very light touch rendering where you maybe model it, you know, with little curved lines or little straight lines, depending what you want to achieve. While from the side, you can focus much more on shape design. And obviously there are some more subtle edges, like the one below the lower lip. That one is not as sharp, but up here it's much more, the upper lip is much more of a sharp kind of a shape, you could say. All right, that was the third part of the series of drawing with design and realism. We did the eye, the nose, and the mouth. So let me know in the comments below what you want to learn about next, and I'll try and do that in the next video. And yeah, if you liked the video, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps my channel grow. Also, make sure to check out the description because I have a few free welcome gifts for people who join the newsletter you don't find here. And yeah, I also have a few courses that you might find interesting if you want a more structured approach to learning. So check out the description, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.